Chess is an exciting and strategic game, but when it comes to cyber chess, most people would not know it, and especially no consent is given before cyber attackers strike and bring you into their game. As businesses and individuals become unwilling participants or players in this game of chess, this session will reveal new perspectives and tips for you to take control. My name is Shamane Tan, and I lead the outreach strategy aimed at helping C-suite executives manage their cyber risk as part of their value preservation and business growth objectives. Cyber Mayday and the Day After is my latest book that's coming out this November, which will cover true cyber emergency stories from leaders around the world. It's also a guide for businesses to prepare, manage, and recover from the inevitable cyber disruptions. You guys are actually one of the first few to get a sneak peek into some of the key insights that's from the book, and I will cover a few true cyber emergency stories as well across educational, logistic, banking, and financial sector, and we might even make a trip to the moon if we have time. We will also explore some common excuses to best practice apathy, including interesting framework that can help you with your crisis communications. Now let's start off first with the educational sector. So NUS is known for their academic programs ranked amongst the top globally. When it comes to security, they are pretty advanced for the educational sector. And they were one of the very first to do their own phishing drills as early as 2013, before the phishing drills platform even became popular. They also formed their computer emergency response team, which was more than 10 years ago. In fact, they were one of Singapore's first certs. I really liked the fact that this was way back before even security became a thing, and this university already has embraced the foresight and thinking in terms of implementing preemptive measures. Now, they are a great example of having their chess pieces ready. So the question then is this: what happens when the hackers make their move? Players, are you ready? In 2017, NUS along with the other local universities suffered from one of the largest security breaches in Singapore, and this was a result of a bid to steal government and research data. It was the biggest ever attack the university suffered from, and this was the work of a sophisticated nation-state threat actor. Leong Boon Ang, who is their IT head of security, revealed that this major cyber incident years ago triggered a positive change in the way the university has executed their cybersecurity strategy since then. In my upcoming book that's going to be released in the US in November, and then around the rest of the world later on in December and Jan, so Leong Boon actually shared in this book as well that through that one incident, everyone realized what it was like to fight a real battle out there. It was the first time they had a full-blown war room. They lived and ate in their room for 2 weeks or more. And it was the first time that their different colleagues within IT all sat down together with them in that room to investigate, to find root causes, and to resolve issues together. So through that, it was an experience that all of them remembered, and one experience that no one would want to relive. Contrasting to previously where they were all mostly focused on incident response, which is more reactive, they have now moved on to a predictive approach where they leverage on threat intelligence to provide an added layer of visibility of who might be attacking them, and the different TTPs that have been used, like tactics, techniques, and procedures that they could be using. So the incident ended up being a very powerful lesson that created a lot of positivity in the organization. In further extracts of the book, Leong Boon also shared that he believed that the best way to learn about cybersecurity is really through experiencing and handling real-world attacks. The main reason that the team has remained very competent is because of their contact with various kinds of incidents that they have handled over the years. Now, moving on to the logistics sector. It was May 2020. Toll Group, the logistic giant that operates in an extensive, diverse road, air, sea, and rail freight transport services across 1,200 locations in more than 50 over countries, suddenly went offline. Now, this was not the first time, because in early 2020, Toll already suffered from another major cyber attack that devastated its IT systems. So after the first attacks, the business owners were increasingly already frustrated about their untraceable packages and missing deliveries. Social media obviously was full of people expressing their disappointment. And this seemed like a horrible deja vu all over again for the business, because most people wouldn't like to reminisce what happened, right, when the hackers make their move. And especially when you are caught in the middle of a cyber emergency. But King Lee, who is Toll's CIO, shared his insider story with me. He said, if you have ever gone through a cyber attack, you wouldn't wish it on anyone else. And unfortunately, Toll went through all of that within a 3-month period. Toll engaged a crisis management process during that time. They put a business continuity plan, a BCP, in place, started communicating to their employees, their customers, regulators, and the media. This was put in place very quickly to control the environment and to also notify their employees. For the following few weeks, Toll painstakingly worked to recover the whole system and bring their business operations back online. After Toll's first attack, they found already that there were areas of their BCPs that could have been improved even further. And even up to today, they are still working with their customers to fine-tune their BCP to face new incidents in the future. King shared with me that what really is key is the ability to communicate all the time, consistently, and provide the information to all the parties. And that is extremely critical, because if they do not communicate well enough, or detailed enough, or clear enough, rumors are going to be filling the void. So instead of letting people speculate, the best is to really just communicate upfront what is happening. King shared that we need to make sure that as we bring the systems back up and online again, it has got to be better, safer, and stronger than before we went down. My question to you is this. During the incident, is there time to think? Have you actually seen what happens in a ransomware attack? So what I'm going to share next is an actual real-life scenario negotiation between a ransomware gang and a $15 billion US victim company that was hit with a 28.75 million ransom in January 2021. Some of you will probably find this very familiar. So for this company, all of their systems were locked, and then they found this message that your network has been locked. You need to pay $30 million US now. Imagine how the team was feeling at that very moment as they're frantically trying to respond. Combine that with the time pressure and also with the awareness that the bad guys are watching their every move. So it's very disconcerting. And the bad guys actually wrote them this message that, oh, it's really funny to see all your admins trying to reinstall your Exchange server in 3 days and you still can't do it. We have encrypted 5,000 out of 6,000 of your servers. And if you do some very simple calculation, your expenditure, for example, might be $50 per hour, or if you're more generous, you're paying your staff $65 per hour. So 20 times 24 hours, and the number of the servers encrypted times the time it takes to get up, it's going to cost you about $10 million, and that's just on your labor expenditure. This was everything the hackers were communicating with. There's no compassion or empathy, and they were very, very sarcastic. They even proceeded to tell them that the timer is ticking, and in the next 8 hours, your price tag will go up to 60 million. So either you take our generous offer and pay us 28.75 million, or invest in quantum computing and expedite the decryption process. So the company ultimately paid an $11 million ransom, with the criminals assuring them that they will not attack them again or help anyone else attack their network moving forward. Now, in the earlier examples, we have all seen what happens when Mayday strikes. But before anything happens, that is when we need to be actually addressing the mindsets and perspectives. I mentioned earlier that I will take you to the moon. So a couple of months ago, I was speaking to Preston Miller, who was the CISO of NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab. And NASA, as you know, is spending more than $500 million on their space exploration efforts, and it's important for them to be able to restore any critical operations in a very timely fashion. But Preston also shared with me that in his previous sector, he came from the Pentagon, right, where they supported war fighters. And confidentiality was at the top of the triad, the CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And they have to ensure that the messages that they are relaying is extremely confidential around their message and operations, right? But at NASA, integrity was actually the top of their list, which is different from C, confidential, because they have to keep the data that they are sharing safe, and they have to make sure that as they are sharing these messages back and forth between their communities, they have to trust the data, and also trust the data that is being sent back and forth their spacecraft and the operations. So it's really important to understand how your business define risk, and then learn how to communicate back in a really relevant manner. Now, one can understand how your business define risk, but at the same time you can still neglect having good practices. How many of us have taken the time to examine the actions of those leaders who have been in crisis mode and have had to take their businesses through a disaster? With the hindsight that they now possess, I find that such lessons are often invaluable in helping us have a better foresight and action plan. Start early. That's what they always advise, because when you are in the midst of a crisis, it's neither the time or space to even start thinking or planning. But how many of you have found that these common excuses still come into play when best practices are not implemented? The CIO magazine actually offers about 10 common excuses that people gives, and all of them hits home. And they offer the most compelling explanation, as to why so many vulnerabilities are not patched, and why there are holes in cybersecurity defenses, why these are not addressed in ongoing ways. So I did a much deeper study with my co-author, Dan Lawman, who was the first CISO of the state of Michigan. And together we provided a lot of solutions to address this further in the book. But for the sake of time, and also in the interest of sharing this with the audience today, I will just cover a few key ones here. So, common excuses would be: we did not have the time, we could not afford it, the business didn't understand why it was necessary, we tried it before, it didn't work, it's too hard, to be honest, we were afraid of what we might discover. So one of the chapters, which is turning cyber incident lemons into organizational lemonade, I provided a comprehensive coverage of tips and solutions to help everyone overcome these common excuses and better manage preparing for cyber emergencies. But for security leaders here are some question checklists that I've put together that will really suggest to you to challenge your thinking and to ensure that you are asking the right questions in attempting to deal with these objections, right? So when it comes to time, where are we spending the bulk of our time? Are we allocating our time proportionately according to the criticality levels of risk? That's a good question to ask yourself. Or are there other areas that we are spending our budget on that can be reallocated at the moment? How does our budget align with the company's strategy and business risk? That's another way to reshape the conversation. What is the current security awareness, culture like among the leadership team? Is that something you're aware of? How does it differ according to the different divisions? Or what was the organizational environment like before when your approach didn't work? Perhaps what can be changed? Maybe can you execute things differently this time? Or have you looked at the mechanics of influence? Have you tried getting allies as well, so that it's not just you fighting an organizational battle? Are there other battles that might result in better outcomes that you can be channeling your energy to or focusing on? Or what are some other smaller initial commitments you can first focus on in securing buy-in from your stakeholders, and then you can work your way on getting more buy-in after that? Are you comfortable with not knowing what are the malicious attackers that are out there and what they know about your company? Right? How are you managing your risk if you do not even know what needs to be managed? So we need to be constantly learning from these incidents, whether it's internally or externally, and even if they don't directly impact us at the moment. Yuval Illouz is the group CISO and the COO of Trust, Data and Resilience at Standard Chartered Bank, a global bank that we know about. It's headquartered in the UK, and he currently leads more than 2,000 employees globally across cybersecurity, business continuity, and operational resilience for the group, and he's based in Singapore. So Yuval revealed to me in the book, The Cyber Mayday and the Day After, about the continuous exercise that he has implemented within the bank, known as the near-miss exercise. So running a near-miss exercise is actually based on recent incidents. Now, although they were not affected, right, they found that it really significantly helped them identify areas of improvements and help them be better prepared for the next attack. And these areas of improvement might relate to a missing action in their playbook, a weak control coverage, a broken process, a missing or perhaps not up-to-date policy, and many, many more. So they found that this is a great opportunity to take a proactive action to uplift the resilience of the whole organization. And they combine these near-miss exercises with their continuous crisis management simulations, and then they have ended up building a really more resilient and cyber-ready organization. If we recognize that disruption is continuous, rather than just looking at it based on an episode level, we can really shift our response from being reactive to making the first move. So here are 5 tips about what you can do about good practice apathy, and some tips to help. Make failure real. So exercises are a must, right? Practice, practice, practice. It's important to know your mindset and what is the leadership's view on cyber failures. Who is accountable? How can you build a culture, right, that works? And also a work environment that does not finger point or blame, but encourage transparency in sharing lessons that have been learned and mistakes that are owned. FMEA, I don't know how many are familiar, that failure mode effects analysis, create a structured process, because this also helps in creating really good habits. But if you take it a step further, it helps you also know what industry peers, if you know what your industry peers are using, and how does your process benchmark against theirs, that is also a really important thing to know. And early identification of business operational continuity measures. So, have regular reports on readiness to management. What has been the impact on other organizations who do not have a BCP? How does your BCP compare in your industry sector? What are the different lessons learned each time that your BCP is being run? Don't always report bad news, but be conscious of showing trends of improvement as well. And then we have methodology, change, control. So what is the process at the moment? Refine, improve, and keep testing. How often have you reviewed your process? Are there ways of doing this more effectively? And finally, get a second opinion, right? Constantly be looking to improve. Third-party experts can provide a fresh look, and we are all stronger together, right? So how can you play on your strengths while leveraging the community or collaborating with existing or new partnerships to help complement and also strengthen your business case. Oftentimes, we have our head in the ground when a crisis strikes. Yet, if we look up, there is an opportunity to gain perspective and clearer perspective on the problem and subsequently formulate better solutions. I know we have all missed flying immensely, and there are many lessons we can actually learn from research literature even on aviation mysteries and missing airplane events, including how they are communicating crisis, right? So crisis communications researcher Kevin Tan is someone that I've spoken to extensively, and he shared with me about his research and development on the CONSOL framework, which stands for coherence, orientation, nuance, support, ongoing, leadership, and emotions. So this framework is really used to guide practitioners on how to break bad news effectively to their stakeholders during a crisis, and it's arguably the first framework that was established in terms of integrating the medical protocols with crisis communications on literature. So this research examined like all these great aviation crises throughout history and how they communicate all of that, and then they look at the shortcomings of it against the CONSOL framework. And as I further research into this, I realized that the core of it can be applied effectively when you're dealing with cyber incident scenarios. So how do you break bad news with CONSOL? Always state the incident clearly, be specific and consistent. That's very important. So for example, company X would like to provide an update regarding the status of data breach of XYZ records, names, birth dates, addresses, and they were publicly accessible on the web server. It was managed by a third-party provider, and this was due to a human error of an employee of the third-party vendor. And we will provide more updates as we progress in our investigations. Do not downplay the seriousness of the incident or the risk of access and misuse, and avoid leaving information vacuum for others to fill. You have to show your customers that you care about their personal information and you care about their concerns as much as they do. Empathy. Communicate message in really high emotional support and exhibit sensitivity. For example, company X is deeply regretful to have caused any concerns with their customers, as having their customers' trust is of great importance. We are conducting a thorough review of our overall security, technology, process, and people. We are focused on our customers' protection and have developed a comprehensive service to support everyone, regardless of whether they were impacted by this incident or not. Next is to state the actions taken to perform the remediation. Upon being notified, Company X took the immediate steps XYZ to contain the breach and notified affected individuals. Leadership. Organizations need to take the lead to show the way ahead, and the options are available to the stakeholders. Company X has established a dedicated website that customers can visit if there's additional questions, or call a dedicated call center or toll-free number for direct assistance. Next up is support. So don't forget to mention any support teams or channels. That's really important because people need to know that these options are available for them. So Company X will continue to exert great effort in providing customers with any ongoing assistance during the investigation. Company X remains committed to achieving the best outcomes for its customers and will take all reasonable steps necessary to achieving this. It is important to state actions or changes that will be taken moving forward to prevent future occurrences. Nuance, orientation, and ongoing. So those are the last three elements. Organizations need to provide easy to understand technical information. And have a strong understanding of your audience as well, because you need to anticipate like your stakeholders' concerns or any questions. So that will be the orientation part. And lastly, you need to have continuous communication and make sure it's a two-way engagement. So that's all for ongoing. You have to provide stakeholders the opportunity to address any concerns or questions and look at a variety of platforms to reach out to the affected individuals. Over notification is also not an issue, because on the contrary, individuals are actually more appreciative in receiving direct and comprehensive communication. One quick thing I just want to highlight is the nuance part, because you have to make sure that you don't overload with too much technical information. It will get lost in translation as well. So that's really key in your crisis communication. So this brings me back to my earlier question. As you can see, there's so much prep work involved and required beforehand, and also to equip you during the crisis. So players, are you ready? Someone has to make the first move, and this question is, who will it be? The hackers or you? And when the game finally begins, how confident are you in saying checkmate? So that's all I have for you today. It's a big pleasure of mine to be able to share this with you, and I'm always happy to continue the conversation. You can find all my details here. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn as well. And for those who are interested in checking out the Cyber Mayday and the day after, feel free to scan the QR code here and grab the pre-order link as well. So thanks again for having me, and enjoy the rest of the sessions. Take care, everyone.